So another go around. I hope you saw it live. If not, here it is. Technology, a wonderful thing. Recorded version. You can check it out now. We've got Eric Starkman of Starkman Approved. Definitely one of our favorite guests. He's been on a couple times before, and definitely one of our favorite journalists as well. Our favorite independent journalist out there, here to talk about the hot manufacturing topics for today. Stay tuned.
Welcome to Manufacturing Talks with Jim Vinosky. Industry has a million cool stories, and Jim talks to the movers and shakers who are making them happen. Let's dive in.
Oh boy, here we are. Live Manufacturing Talks, second go around, third try this week, and second try today. Technology has not been our friend, but people, here we are. My goodness, it's been a story. I hope you're still with us out there. We're 10 minutes late from our original start time. We got kicked out. It's craziness here, but we are on. Looking for a really great show today. I've got an excellent guest who's been on a couple times with us before. His name is Eric Starkman, independent journalist at Starkman Approved. And let's bring him on. Welcome, Eric.
Thank you. Great to be here.
It's great to have you here. My gosh, it has been technology insanity for us this week, hasn't it?
Well, that's what you get for dealing with me, because the technology guys are not kind to me. And,
well, you know, it's been both of us. So Eric had some technical difficulties. We were originally scheduled for Monday, and then we tried again Wednesday. Didn't work at all. Rescheduled. Wait, today's Wednesday. So anyway, we are on now. We jumped on about 10 minutes ago. And for some reason, I glanced down after we've been going for a few minutes, and we'd gotten kicked off. So if we showed up earlier, I'm sorry. Don't know what's going on. We're on now. Eric, welcome. Lots to cover today. In fact, we already started covering some of it. Let's jump back into it. The first thing I wanted to talk about is this UAW strike here in Michigan and beyond. Obviously, a lot going on with our domestic automakers and the kind of impasse that we've got with the United Auto Workers. So give us the top line on what's going on with these guys.
Well, I see it as a real tragedy. You know, I think that the UAW has brought some critical things to light. This wealth disparity in America, which is very real, and they've done a great job of highlighting that. And I think they've done an excellent job of highlighting the weaknesses of the managements of GM and Ford. You know, labor management is a critical part of production. And, you know, this is GM's second, they had a strike 4 years ago, and now they got another one, and they don't seem all that prepared either. You know, I've seen analysts on TV that have said that GM is the least prepared of the three automakers. They have less supply at their dealerships right now. So if they're hit with a strike, you know, they're not going to be able to replenish that supply. And, you know, the UAW hasn't even hit GM where it really hurts. And that's in Arlington, Texas, where they make their big profit SUVs.
And your articles have been incredibly insightful throughout this thing. I've been following your coverage very closely, and you've not been a fan either of GM or of Ford through this, have you?
No, and I haven't been for quite some time. You know, I don't think they're ready for EVs. You know, Kathy Woods, you know, the big Tesla bull, you know, she was into that company early on. You know, she said nearly 2 years ago that Ford and GM don't have it in their DNA to go the EV route. And I think that she's been proven correct. You know, they're having, particularly GM, it's surprising to me how this hasn't gotten extensively covered. You know, a year ago, they had an investor day where they were talking about BrightDrop, that's their electric vans. And they said they said 25,000 orders, and the Canadian government gave them over $200 million to retool the plant. It's just outside of Ontario, and it shut down for 6 months.
Yeah,
Right.
which is it's a horrible shame. I actually covered those guys. They had put together their whole initial plant over by Detroit in some extra space they had. They got it all put together and then shipped it up to Canada. They proved it out over there, and then once it was all lined out, they were set to produce, and they shipped it up to Canada. And yeah, just a few months later, now they're shutting down because they don't have the batteries, right?
Right. They're shutting it down till spring. Well, spring is March, and
Yeah.
we've got like over 1,000 workers. I think it's 1,700 workers, 1,300 union workers. They're all out of work,
Yep.
and it's a tragedy.
Yep.
And they said GM at their investor day a year ago that Bright Drop was going to be $1 billion in revenues.
And it should have been. I mean,
20
they caught the market just right. The demand was there. Yeah, what a horrible misstep that was.
Right, and the GM numbers, and I'm gonna post this later on. Their numbers are horrific. Their EV numbers, but they're even worse than the media reports. When GM reports deliveries, that doesn't mean sales. That means deliveries to the dealers. They still got
Right.
to sell them, and the numbers are very, very small. And I just it doesn't inspire any confidence that they're going to be material players in the EV world.
Yeah. Well, and there's a lot beyond that. I had Mark Mills with the Manhattan Institute on for my first live show, and he's talked quite a bit about how the materials aren't there, and the fact that GM already has this trouble with batteries. And how well are they out in front of this crunch there's going to be on things like copper and lithium? But there's plenty of blame to go around. You've written quite a bit about CEO pay, and again, hitting Ford and GM really hard on this one, right?
Yeah, I mean the pay, and it turns out that Mary Barr's pay was like the UAW underestimated her pay.
Oh yeah, I saw that in your article just the other day.
Yeah, it's like in the last 4 years, it's actually averaged 41 million, not 29 million last year. Last year was actually 31, but the year before it was 62. And it just shows you how obscene this pay is. Like they can't even calculate it. It's like, it just, it's not readily accountable. And, Barr in April, or I think it was March or April of 2022, said that all executive compensation was going to be tied to EV performance.
Mm-hmm.
And how did she get, even if the low end, the 29 million last year, they missed everything.
Right.
It was a very poor performance. And the other thing that I don't know why this isn't an issue, but corporate governance experts for years have saying you can't have the CEO hold the chairman of the board. You can't have both. It's not an independent board. If the chair sets the agenda,
Yep.
and
A little
she's
too cushy that way, huh?
and she's chairman and CEO.
Yep.
It's a sad situation, but the unions have made some unreasonable demands that I think are hurting their costs. And, I hope they don't hold out for get paid for 32 hours.
Right.
40 hours on a 32 week, because it's not going to
Aren't they also going for a defined benefit pension again, rather than something like a 401k?
They are, and I don't understand that. Pensions can be looted. A company to go bankrupt, they can get out of their pension obligations. They're usually underfunded. Like, no way. I'd rather have a 401k plan.
Mm-hmm. Well, and it's bad both ways, because it's supposedly putting the company on the hook, so investors look poorly upon it. And then you're right, push comes to shove, the company can just change the terms.
Yeah, so that doesn't strike me as a reasonable demand. And,
No, and this is where I kind of, lay some blame on the UAW and unions in general. It was Samuel Gregg, who was also on the show a couple months ago, wrote recently about some of this union versus company dynamic. And he made the point that the strikes from back, several decades ago and all the excessive union demands then are a big part of what drove American manufacturing overseas. And it's a shame now that you start seeing companies coming back, the reshoring and all that, that now we're getting back into this kind of excessive demand mode that is going to kind of scare people away from having their manufacturing here on shore.
Well, one thing that I really criticize Fain for it, is there's kind of a naiveness about him. Like, it's like we just want money because like we got jobs and we want more money, but they're not willing to address some of the critical issues that a company like Stellantis, like that CEO, he's just a bottom line guy. If you could convince him that you could create a labor force that's going to help him make more money, you'll get what you want from him. But Stellantis has a real problem with its plant. I don't know how well you know Detroit, but Warren, which is just right next to Detroit, they have a big truck plant, and their absenteeism there sometimes runs as high as 25%. And even before the strike, the union steward at that plant was warning people that this is going to be a problem. And
Right.
And
it's tough to make your vehicles when the people supposed to make them aren't there, right?
Like 25%, that's a lot of absenteeism. So
yes, it is.
They haven't addressed these issues, and I thought he burned the CEO of Stellantis as well. Like Fain said that he met with the guy and he kept saying how brutal the mandates were, the EV mandates are.
Mm-hmm.
And when he said that in confidence, but Fain himself was complaining that the EV mandates are going to destroy the jobs. So
right.
you should have felt simpatico to the guy. And this is the one CEO, not the one, Toyota's CEO and Subaru's CEO also had the guts. But they said these mandates aren't reasonable, that the supply isn't there. The willingness of consumers to buy these EVs aren't there. And they had the guts to say that. And, they get really negative press. Like the CEO from Toyota was forced out as CEO, but he's still chairman. But they're proven right.
Right.
Now Jim Farley's saying, well, we got to make more hybrids because like hybrids are selling.
Right. But where was he when all that debate was going on and the administration was coming down with these ridiculous mandates that aren't going to be fulfilled? We won't have the materials to make all these batteries. And hybrids really, to me, are the way to go, at least in the near term. And yet, no change to that requirement that we all buy an EV next.
I linked to a review that one of the trades is called The Drive, and I think they're very good. And the guy who reviewed the new Prius, which is a beautiful car. I have it. It's not the old ugly Prius. It's like
right.
It's got some real style to it, and he couldn't stop raving about it.
Mm-hmm.
He kept saying that this is the car we need for the times.
Yep.
You don't have to give up anything. If you get the plug-in version and you're only using it to tool around town, you'll never need gas. It's got a 40-mile range, and if you have to drive farther, then you got the gas.
Well, and that's the thing, it's the mandates take the focus away from serving your customers. And that's where it's such a nightmare with the EVs now, because people are realizing the tremendous drawbacks, the range anxiety and the lack of infrastructure and even lifespan concerns and repairability. And so to have done it wisely and allowed multiple solutions to be offered that would be more in keeping with the infrastructure we have today and make a more sensible transition, that would have been something that made sense. Instead, it's whole hog on EVs and we're headed toward disaster.
What I find most frightening of all, growing up, I never had a high opinion of politicians, but particularly I grew up in Canada. So,
Oh yeah. Yep.
um, but I always imagined that there were like really smart people running government. Like the people behind the clowns were
Yeah.
smart, and the people who are overseeing the EV transition in America, it's a disaster. And Jennifer Granholm, I mean, her name is synonymous with green energy
Yep.
failures.
Yep.
And, and
Starting back when she was governor here in Michigan.
right, the Mackinac, I think, didn't you have somebody from Mackinac?
I did, yeah. Jason Hayes was on just recently.
They do some great work. And
Hmm.
when she was nominated to be energy secretary, they did a compendium of all her green energy failures.
Yep.
It's pretty extensive.
Yep.
And it's actually really scary. They have no clue. They're like school kids. Like, well, electric vehicles don't have emissions, so de facto,
Yeah.
get rid of all cars and not consider how they get made or anything. It's really that simplistic.
Yeah. Well, and you mentioned the jobs as well, and the fact that making EVs likely will send automaker jobs overseas. Mark Mills made that point as well, and he talked about there's all this discussion of EVs being so much simpler of construction, and that's why you don't need as many people to make them. And he says that's just pure fiction. They're not simpler overall. They're simpler in the car company's factory, but that's because they have a whole different way of transferring power. So instead of it being mechanical and having these workers that make transmissions and gears and shafts, you have workers that make, power inverters and all these electronic components. And yeah, they're all overseas. Additionally, you have all this, 6 times the minerals that it takes to make an EV versus a nice car. And that's all mining, which we've already mostly sent overseas. So yeah, the jobs go away and we're just cutting our own throat. It's insanity.
It's not going to end well.
No. One thing you hit Ford for quite a bit and continue to, because they continue, is recalls. And so obviously there's this quality issue as well. You want to touch on that a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, they've had since January of last year more than 100 safety recalls. And some of them are recalls on recalls, like the National Highway Transportation Safety Administration. They're actually conducting an investigation of an earlier recall on the work that was done. And, I would welcome a story. To the best of my knowledge, to what I've been able to determine, the NHTSA hasn't had its budget increased. And they've got to deal with all these new technologies plus all these recalls. Like, the Inspector General did a pretty damning report on them saying that it takes too long to do these investigations. But that to me is not a surprise. They've got so much on their plate to have to deal with. And the government, not the government, the automakers, they have a lot of legal might. So it's not that easy for them. If the automakers want to fight a recall, they can throw a lot of roadblocks up their way. So these guys got to really dot their I's and cross their T's. And there's another big recall. And I don't understand why the media hasn't made a bigger deal about this, but there was the airbags that what was it, Takata airbags? It was one of the biggest recalls of all time.
Yep.
Well, there's another problem with another manufactured airbag, and the principles, like the technology that caused the other one to recall, is actually very similar.
Oh wow.
It's the Wall Street Journal just reported that GM has like 20 million vehicles that could be impacted. That's a lot of money to recall that, something of that size. And, the quality, when I was growing up, there was a common phrase, my parents always had with their friends: my car's in the shop, can you give me a ride to work? And the Japanese came in, Toyota and Honda, and they started making these great vehicles. And that's what I switched to. And, I never had unscheduled, I only had scheduled maintenance on my vehicles. I never had any of these problems. And even, the Japanese automakers, they're having some recalls as well. Not to the same extent as GM and Ford. Well, Ford's in a league on its own, but I think Hyundai's catching up.
Yep.
They've had some serious recalls as well. But it just seems to me everything's going backwards. Cars are getting less reliable, less efficient, more recalls, more repairs. And, you would think that with all the advancements in technology, things should be getting better, not worse.
Right. Okay, hold that thought. We're going to take a quick break. I'm going to play an ad from our sponsor, DYS Media, and then we will be back here with Eric Starkman just shortly.
DYS Media, your digital media relations agency. Public relations, website design, digital marketing. You get found by the customers and talent who need your solutions. You get media placements in top publications, the best job candidates coming to your website, a digital presence that gets you found by the right people. Call 616-298-8798 to get started today.
Thank you to DYS Media, our sponsor. Look them up online. Great guys. They will help you with all your PR needs. And welcome back to Eric Starkman of Starkman Approved. We've been talking about some of the travails with our automakers and the UAW strike. Eric, I wanted to jump in. You've actually been fairly positive about Stellantis versus Ford and GM. So can you give us some reasons for that?
Yeah, there's a fraction that's been published about the CEO of Stellantis, at least in the US, than Ford and GM. But what I've read about the guy, he's very clear in his vision. It's really easy to understand his position. And it's like China can undercut us on price. And the only way that his competition is going to be China and Tesla. And he wants to be able to maintain his profit margins. When they talk about profit margins, everybody seems to use different numbers, but he used 14%. What he said his profit margin was, and he said that he estimated GM at 8 and Ford at even less. And it always made sense to me, like his vision, and also he seems to be more deliberate. The media beats up Stellantis. They don't sell any EVs in the United States right now, but the Fiat electric Fiat is like one of the top selling. That's one of their vehicles. That's one of the top selling electric vehicles in Europe. And his position is that EVs will never become widespread until you can get them down in price and make them affordable. And it always made sense to me. And one of his vehicles is the #1 selling hybrid in America. I forget which one. I think it's one of his Jeep vehicles, but they're into hybrids in a big way. And, he just seems very focused. The other thing that impressed me about Stellantis is, getting training, the right people is going to be tough. And, GM and Ford, they want to hire tech people from other companies. And Stellantis has forged these associations with all these universities and, technical schools to send their people for retraining and be able to keep them. And, if GM and Ford are doing that, they didn't deem it important enough to share that, get it out. I read that story in the Detroit News. Mm-hmm. And, the reporter that presumably found out about it from one of the PR people. Yep. And for the most part, I've been impressed with Stellantis's messaging. They don't, PR is often very indicative of the management. If a company is talking in a lot of PR speak and talking about their team members and making statements that, aren't the way you and I would talk, it's a disingenuousness, and it comes from the top. And you know, the statements that Stellantis has made, for the most part, I've been pretty impressed with.
Yeah. Well, and for those who aren't aware, Stellantis is Chrysler, Dodge, Jeep are their major brands. They're not an American automaker, right? They're headquartered in the Netherlands?
Yeah, they're in Amsterdam.
Yep.
And by the way, they're not. Sorry.
No, yeah, because they own these legacy American models, brands. We count them among the big three. I'm a Jeep owner, so I'm very happy with my Jeep Gladiator. So I'm also a fan. It's good to know that they're performing a little better than our other two, and yet, like you mentioned, you know, that we're still far behind some of the industry leaders like Toyota and Honda.
Yeah, they by the way, they have like a dozen brands. Like that company is like beyond my comprehension. Like you gotta make Jeeps, and then they make Maseratis, and they make Fiats, and you know, that's a pretty diverse lineup. But his thought is that he can wring out the costs like across, you know, all his brands, and so far he's been doing it. You know, Stellantis' stock is up this year. You know, you know, and I think one thing that hinders them in the United States is just the name. How they came up with the name Stellantis.
I have no idea. No idea where that came from.
It sounds like a disease, doesn't it? Like I came down with Stellantis.
Either that or one of these drugs that you see advertised on TV, you know, that causes all these side effects. Let's bring it back to Michigan, because one thing you've also covered quite a bit, and going back to Ford, is this battery plant. And so you mentioned it earlier, Ford has announced that we're putting a pause on this battery plant after we've already spent, you know, untold millions of dollars of taxpayer money. So give us your thoughts on that whole shebang.
You know, that's a hot button for me, because I've gotten to know some of the people in that region, and I think it's a disgrace. I mean, the people in geez, I've written about it so many times.
Marshall.
In Marshall, which is my middle name, so I should know that.
Yes.
These
Definitely.
people don't want the plant. Okay, it's a rural area. A lot of people get our water from wells. The way that Michigan, you know, assembled that land is a story in itself. And here they go, and it's fertile farmland. Like I can't get my arms around it. You got a company that boasting on its website about its commitment to sustainability. They're tearing up farmland.
Yeah, cutting down 100-year-old trees,
and then they say, you know what? We don't know if we really want to go ahead with this plant.
After they've cleared the land.
Yeah, it's already been damaged. I mean, the damage will be limited if they don't build the plant, because you don't have to deal with the lithium. But, you know, lithium, there is some real danger. These people, they got to test their water twice. You know, it's all safe. You got nothing to worry about, but you should test your water twice.
Yeah.
And I just think it's a disgrace, the money that, you know, that they're getting. And I'm also, you know, I think there's some dishonesty here. When they announced the plant, they said that the jobs were going to pay $41,500 a year, something like that. And the prevailing wage out in that area is actually $45,000, so below the prevailing wage. But at some point, they knew what they were planning on paying their employees. And now they're saying, well, it's on pause because we don't know what the labor costs are going to be.
Yeah, something doesn't add up.
And this hasn't been widely covered, but there's some Republicans in Congress that are really bothered by that plant and the Chinese affiliation. And they say that they've got documents that show that it's supposed to be 2,500 jobs, but a lot of those jobs are actually going to be Chinese nationals. And, so.
Right, yeah. Well, and that's the other thing we didn't talk about is it's the battery plant is in partnership with a Chinese company.
And the whole idea behind IRA was to reduce our dependence on China.
Yeah,
And
this
this is
doesn't.
an example of them, somebody thinking they're smarter than everybody else. Well, we won't call it a partnership. We'll own the plant. We'll license the technology. And the Journal had a great story. I got to give them credit. You know, Mary Barr really stuck it to them. You know, she's got, you know, the Journal didn't report this, but Political did, that she's very tight with President Biden. Has been to the White House 8 times. And she was going around telling people in Congress that if Ford gets away with building that plant, that she's going to have to do the same thing and partner with the Chinese. And that might have something to do with why they want to back out.
Well, it has probably has something to do with the pause. It certainly has something to do with the Republicans in Congress poking around on the details. The other piece is it's around $1 billion in public subsidies that are bolstering this construction and supposed battery making, which may or may not ever happen at this point. And it's just insanity. You know, here we're a nation, $33.5 trillion in debt. Our state isn't exactly looking rosy either. And we're just dumping all this public money into Ford and this Chinese company to make batteries.
And there's no thought. You know, if I was Governor Whitmer, I'd be building like the Harvard School of Trades, you know, for electricians. There's going to, if EVs catch on in Michigan, I can tell you right now, there's going to be a shortage of electricians because that's what's happened in California. There's, you know, people need chargers installed in their home, and you need an electrician to do that. There aren't enough of them around.
Right.
And that's a great job to go into. You know, interesting enough, Sean Fain is an electrician.
Mm-hmm. Yep. From the front line. Yeah.
But I think, you know, Michigan would be much better off instead of giving these subsidies to Ford and GM. And they shouldn't give them in advance. The subsidies should come after they have the factories up and running, and then submit something every year. This is the payroll that we paid, and then they get some, you know, discount. But I've seen stories out of Michigan. It's not just Michigan, New York State's another, you know, these.
Right. Oh yeah. I mean, it's,
but they don't
insane
know.
amounts of money from the federal government that's pouring into all these projects. And I've hit this point numerous times. There are all kinds of manufacturing leaders who should know better. We've been through this before. You know, they're touting all this spending and saying, oh, it's this renaissance of manufacturing. No, it's not. It's a renaissance of government spending. It's all going to end poorly because all it does is inflate bubbles that collapse. I mean, look what happened to Foxconn over in Wisconsin. I say that again and again. It's the same story all over again. Dumped a bunch of public money, cleared a bunch of good land, kicked people off of it, and, you know, built a fraction of what was promised. And now there's almost nothing happening there.
We're so much in agreement. I grew up in Canada where I saw this for a long time. Government money getting poured into projects. You know, right? There was Montreal. They built this, you know, real big modern airport, but it was like too far from the city. And I don't even know if it's still open, or for a while they were using it for like charter flights, but they had to go and, you know, upgrade the Dorval, the main airport, because nobody wanted to go to the other airport.
Wow.
It's like, you know, government people should just recognize that they should not be trying to dictate enterprise. You know, you got to let the market decide things on their own. And I wrote about this the other day. You know, I think EVs, you know, I talk to people. You know, I saw somebody, there's a guy around the corner from me. There's the new Rivian SUV. And I think it's beautiful. Like whenever I go by, I feel like I gotta pay my respects. You know, I'm always looking at it. And the other day, you know, the owner was there, it's always parked there, but I've never seen anybody there. And the owner was there, and he had the back open. He had a big, giant German Shepherd in there. The dog had all the room in the world. And I said to the guy, "How do you like your Rivian?" And he goes, "I love it. It's my third EV, and I don't know if EVs really are better for the climate, but I sure like driving them." And if they would just let people just decide on their own,
Right.
I think the acceptance level would be so much higher. I think it's become a political issue, and and it is for me too. It's like whenever I think EVs, I think Jennifer Granholm, and it's like I want to buy the most fuel inefficient car I can find. Just
I hear you. Well, we are almost out of time, Eric. Is there anything else that's hot on your mind that we haven't covered yet?
No, it's I think these are frightening times because I don't see a future for GM and Ford, and there's no plan on what we're going to do, like how we're going to. These are iconic companies.
Yeah.
And I'm quite bothered by it. The innovation isn't entirely in the United States anymore. Although I think you'll be interested in what I'm putting together on Toyota.
Oh, yeah. We'll watch for that.
Yeah, no, Toyota, I was shocked at the extent of their operations in the United States.
Oh, yeah.
And it's critical operations. It's not just a sales office. There's some of their chief scientists based here in the United States. And some of the things that they're doing, their design is done in the United States. It's I'll be interested in your feedback on the piece, but I become, really, Toyota to me was always like this bigger than life car company. Like I never associated any name to it. It was just like some of these great cars I imagine came in from Japan. But I'm learning how many of their cars are actually manufactured right here in the United States.
Oh, yeah. Yep.
And they're upping their investment in this country. And from what I can tell, they're not getting huge tax breaks to do it.
No, but they're going to the places where they can play for the long term.
Yep. They got a real vision.
Well, I'll look for that article, and thanks as always for your insights. They definitely paint a unique picture that I don't think anyone else brings to the show as far as your journalist's eye on some of these manufacturing topics. So thank you. You will definitely be back on in the future.
Always love being here anytime.
Good deal. Thank you, Eric. And of course, thanks to all of you for tuning in. Those of you who saw it live, thank you for hanging out. And we will have a recording out there. If you missed any of it, look for my YouTube channel or my podcast outlets. And this will be out there here in the next day or so. And then, of course, as always, we're here normally recorded shows every Tuesday. So look for those. So thanks again, and we will see you soon.
Thanks for tuning in to Manufacturing Talks with Jim Benoski. Watch for new episodes dropping every Tuesday, and don't forget to like, share, comment, and subscribe.